My name is Rachel Turner. I'm 34 years old and I live in Denver, Colorado. 2 years ago, I thought my family loved me. I thought blood meant loyalty. I thought the house I grew up in would always be a place I belonged. I was wrong. Because one afternoon, a stranger knocked on my own front door and handed me an eviction notice from my own parents. If you had told me a year before that day that my mother and my younger brother would try to throw me out of a house I legally owned, I would have laughed in your face. But that's exactly what happened. And what I did next changed everything. This is my story. Growing up, I was the responsible one. The one who stayed close to home while my brother Daniel chased one failed business idea after another. I never resented him for it. That's just who he was. Dreamer, charming, always somebody's favorite. When my grandmother passed away, she left the family house to me. Not because she loved me more, but because she trusted me to take care of it and to make sure it never left the family. I promised her I would. For the first year, everything felt normal. My parents lived in the house with me. I paid the property taxes, covered the repairs, kept everything running. Daniel visited on holidays. We were, by every appearance, a normal, loving family. I never imagined that the house that held all our memories would become the thing that tore us apart. The first sign came quietly, the way most betrayals do. My mother started mentioning, almost casually, how unfair it was that Daniel didn't have a place of his own. At first I agreed. I even offered to help him with a down payment on an apartment. But she wanted something else. She wanted the house. "You have a good job, Rachel," she said one evening. "You could buy somewhere new. Let your brother have this one. He needs the stability." I told her the house wasn't just property to me. It was Grandma's last wish. She smiled, but something in her eyes had already changed. That's when I started noticing things. Documents on the kitchen counter that weren't mine. Whispered phone calls that stopped the moment I walked into a room. My father avoiding my eyes at dinner. I told myself I was imagining it. I wish I had trusted my instincts sooner. 3 months later, I came home from a business trip to find the locks changed. I stood on my own porch, key in hand, unable to open my own front door. When I called my mother, she didn't apologize. She said calmly, like she'd rehearsed it, "This is Daniel's house now. We filed the paperwork last month." I felt the ground disappear beneath me. They had used a forged transfer document, one my father had drafted with a lawyer he knew from years back, claiming that Grandma's will had been amended before her death to leave the house to Daniel. A will I had never seen. A will that, as I would later learn, never actually existed. I stood outside that house, the one I had paid to maintain for 2 years, and realized my own family had been planning this for months behind my back, but I had no idea just how deep it went. That night, I sat in my car in a hotel parking lot and cried until I had nothing left. I kept replaying every dinner, every conversation, every warm hug from my mother, wondering how much of it had been real and how much had simply been a performance while they planned to take everything from me. I called Daniel. He didn't deny it. He said, "You'll be fine, Rachel. You always land on your feet." As if stealing my house was just another one of his careless mistakes, easy to shrug off. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely alone. My own family had chosen to erase me rather than share. I wish I could say I fought back immediately. I didn't. For almost 2 weeks, I simply grieved, not just the house, but the family I thought I had. That's when everything changed, because grief eventually turned into resolve. I hired a lawyer, not out of anger yet, but out of confusion. I needed to understand how this had even been possible. What we uncovered stunned even my attorney. The amended will my parents used had never been filed with the county before Grandma's death. It had been created and backdated only weeks after I was locked out. My father's lawyer friend had helped draft a document designed to look official, but it lacked the notarization and witness signatures required by law. In other words, it was fake. But that wasn't all. My lawyer pulled the original property records, the ones filed the year my grandmother passed away, and there it was, in black and white, my name, listed as sole legal owner, filed and notarized months before she died. My family hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. They had committed fraud. I sat in that lawyer's office holding the real deed in my hands, and for the first time since the lock had been changed, I felt something besides sadness. I felt clarity. I want to be clear about something. This was never about revenge for the sake of hurting them. This was about the truth finally being exposed, in front of everyone who had chosen to believe their lies. My lawyer filed for an emergency eviction hearing, except this time, I wasn't the one being evicted. I was the one filing to reclaim what had always legally been mine. I didn't tell my parents what I had found. I let them believe they had won. I let Daniel move his furniture in. I let my mother tell relatives how generous she'd been in giving him a home. Because I knew that in 3 weeks, we would all be standing in front of a judge, and only one of us would be holding the real deed. I spent those 3 weeks quietly gathering everything. Bank statements proving I had paid every tax bill, every repair invoice, every utility payment for 2 straight years. Every piece of evidence that the house had always been mine in practice, not just on paper. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry in that courtroom. I was going to let the truth speak for itself. The night before the hearing, my mother called me. She sounded almost sweet. The way she used to sound before all of this began. I hope we can move past this, she said. Family is family. I didn't argue with her. I simply said, I'll see you tomorrow. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring. I met with my lawyer one final time. Reviewed every document, every date, every inconsistency in their fake will. She looked at me and said, Rachel, this isn't even close. They didn't just make a mistake, they broke the law. I barely slept that night. Not from fear, but from the strange, quiet anticipation of finally being able to tell the truth out loud in a room where it would actually matter. What happened the next morning still shocks me, even now. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. My mother sat beside Daniel, confident, almost smug. My father wouldn't look at me. Their lawyer began by presenting the amended will, claiming Daniel was the rightful owner and that I had no legal standing in the property. Then it was our turn. My lawyer stood and calmly placed the original, notarized deed on the judge's desk, the one filed the year Grandma passed, listing my name as sole owner. Then she presented the tax records, every payment I had made for 2 years straight. Then, finally, she presented the forensic analysis showing the amended will had been created weeks after the eviction, not months before Grandma's death. The judge's expression changed almost instantly. She looked directly at my parents' lawyer and asked a single question. Are you telling this court that a document backdated after the fact should override a legally filed deed? The silence in that room was the loudest sound I have ever heard. My mother's confident expression collapsed. Daniel stared at the floor. And for the first time in months, I watched the truth finally outweigh their lies. The judge ruled in my favor within the hour. Not only was I reinstated as the legal owner, but the court referred the fraudulent will to the district attorney's office for further review. My father's lawyer friend, the one who helped draft the fake document, was later investigated for his role in the fraud. My parents were ordered to vacate the property immediately. Daniel tried to call me that same week. I let it go to voicemail. There was nothing left to say that the courtroom hadn't already said for me. My mother never apologized, not directly. But months later, I heard through a cousin that she had told someone. I never thought Rachel would actually fight back. That single sentence told me everything I needed to know about how little they had ever truly respected me. I still live in that house today. Some nights I sit on the same porch where I once stood locked out of my own home, and I think about how close I came to simply accepting what they tried to take from me. I learned something that year that I'll never forget. Love without honesty isn't love at all. It's just convenience, dressed up to look like family. I don't regret standing up for the truth, even though it cost me the relationship I once had with my mother and my brother. Some bridges aren't meant to be repaired. They're meant to teach you the value of the ones still standing. If there's one thing I want anyone watching this to take away, it's this. The people who are supposed to protect you the most are sometimes the ones you have to protect yourself from. And when that day comes, don't be afraid to let the truth speak louder than their lies. Because in the end, it wasn't revenge that saved me. It was the truth.